Lacking basic sanitary services and drinking water may be identified as a slum for census purposes. Slums are clusters of informal housing with the following characteristics: unhealthy houses, overcrowded homes, limited or no access to basic services, lack of recreational facilities, lack of recreational facilities, no secure and tenure, secure and tenure. Demolitions and evictions, violence, congested street. Then next ହେଲା ତମର ଘେଟୋ ଘେଟୋଜାଇସନ୍ ଘେଟୋ ଷ୍ଟେସନ ଘେଟିଓ ଷ୍ଟେସନ ଏଇ ନାଁଟା ମୁଁ ଫର୍ଷ୍ଟ ଟାଇମ ପାଇଁ ଶୁଣୁଛି ଘେଟିଓ ଷ୍ଟେସନ ଘେଟୋ ମାନେ କଣ ଘେଟୋ ଇଜ an area or locally that is populated largely by members of a particular community ଆଚ୍ଛା ଗୋଟେ particular community ଲୋକ ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ ସ୍ଥାୟୀ କରୁଥିବେ ତାହେଲେ ତାକୁ କୁହାଯିବ ଘେଟୋ Ghetto is an area or locality that is populated largely by members of a particular community. Ghetto station is a process that leads to the formation a ghetto. This may occur due to the various social, cultural, and economic reasons. The phenomena ghetto was featured of multi-ethnic areas. They are the most marginal space in American cities. Most often, each ghetto is populated by a single ethno-racial group. The then slums. So, ghetto are extremely case of marginalization and discrimination. Marginality, according to him, the ghetto from the other spiritual. Hello. Other spiritual other spiritual from other spatial formations of urban marginality. According to him, the ghetto is rooted in the discriminations towards and the spatial exclusion of one particular ethno-racial group from society. A ghetto is also a distinct form of settlement because of its unique social and spatial organization resulting in the development of the parallel institution within them. Blacks were recruited into the northern U.S. cities after World War One because their unskilled labor was indispensable of the industry to the industry that formed the backbone of the expanding factory economy. But there was no questions of them mixing and consorting with whites who regarded them as inherently, constantly inferior and shown of ethnic honoring owing to the stain of the slavery. Gated communities gated communities is a urban phenomena associated with metropolitan center. It is an urban phenomena which is associated with the metropolitan center. It refers to a group of homes that are surrounded by a gated wall fence or other physical barrier. A gated community is a self-contained world. It is a case of voluntary exclusion. A group of people belonging to the same socio-economic ladder develop exclusive residence area for their life with access to other city dwellers is denied. According to Snyder in 1997, described gated communities as residential area with area restricted access in which normally public spaces are privated. They are security developments with designated perimeters, usually walls of fence and controlled entrances that are intent to prevent penetrations by non-residents. Most definitions emphasize the physical element of gated communities. They focus on gated communities as a spatial phenomena about the socio-economic consequences. Other elements of a gated communities are as follows. ପ୍ରଥମ ହେଲା ଟାଇପ ଅଫ ହାଉସିଂ କେମିତି ଘର ହେଇଥିବା ଦରକାର ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ହେଲା ଲୋକେସନ ଥାର୍ଡ ହେଲା ସୋସିଓ ଇକୋନୋମିକ status of residence fourth ହେଲା closed and exclusive settlement. Gated communities have emerged as an important features of Indian cities, although the concept of is new. The phenomena of enclave settlement is quite old. During the medieval times, she worked in the city was very common. On the other hand, during the medieval times, the walled city was very common. On the other hand, during the colonial period, the British developed a cantonment which restricted access for other trains. The affluent groups tend in exclusive enclaves cut off from the rest of the city. There are four types of gated. In recent years, affluent class people have been attracted to living in gated communities. This has led to the increase in the number of gated communities in urban cities. Then ହେଲା ତମର there are many disadvantages that are associated with gated communities. So, their first disadvantage was isolation of gated community from their surrounding community. Restrictive rules of retro regulation and residence. Relatively, relatively high maintenance cost. Then next ତମର ଅଛି यूनिट 14 ଟା କାଢିଥା ମୁଁ ଜଷ୍ଟ ଟିକେ ପାଣି ପିଇକି ଆସୁଛି ହେଲା 1 ମିନିଟ ର ପ୍ରକାଶ ଭାଇ, ପ୍ରକାଶ ଭାଇ ନାହାନ୍ତି କି? ଦେଖିଦେଲୁ ଟିକେ ଏଇଠି, ନାଇଁ ଏଇଠି ବସିନଥିବେ, ଖରା ହଉଛି। ଅଶୋକ ଭାଇ ବି ନାହାନ୍ତି? କେହି ନାହାନ୍ତି? କୁଆଡେ ପଳେଇ ଯାଉଛନ୍ତି? ଏ ଏଇ ଶୁଣିଲୁ ଶୁଣିଲୁ ଟିକେ, ମୋ ପାଇଁ ଟିକେ ଏମର୍ଜେନ୍ସି ଥଣ୍ଡା ପାଣିଟା ଟିକେ ନେଇ ଆସିବୁ ତଳୁ। ମୁଁ ତାଙ୍କୁ କହିଥାନ୍ତି, କ୍ଲାସ ଅଛି କି ଏବେ? ସେ ଖାଲି ଟିକେ ନେଇ ଆସିବ। କ୍ଲାସ ମୁଁ ତ ଖାଲି ଟିକେ ନେଇ ଆସ ତଳୁ। ହଁ ହଁ ବୋଟଲ ଅଛି। ହଁ ନିଅ ନିଅ ଖାଲି ଟିକେ ମୁଁ ଓହୋ ଟିକେ ମତେ ଆଣିକି ଦେଇଦିଅ ରୁମ୍ ଟିକେ। ହଁ ନେକ୍ସଟ ହେଲା ତମର ସୋସିଆଲ ୱେଲବିଙ୍ଗ। ହେଲା ସୋସିଆଲ ୱେଲବିଙ୍ଗ ରେ ଆମେ ପଢିବା କନସେପ୍ଟ ଅଫ ସୋସିଆଲ ୱେଲବିଙ୍ଗ, then evolution of the social well-being, social indicators, then movements, then measurement and representation of social well-being, quality of life concept and measurement, human development concept and measurement. Human development important ଅଛି, sustainable development important ଅଛି। ଏଇଥିରୁ question ଆସିପାରେ। ତମର ଏଇଠି sustainable development goals 17ଟା ଦେଇଛି, already ବହିରେ ଦେଇଛି। then some observations from India, then first ହେଲା concept of social well-being. Social well-being ମାନେ କଣ? Social well-being କାହାକୁ refer କରେ? It refers to a state of human existence within a society that ensure justice. The idea of a just society needs to be differentiated from that of an equal society, while attaining perfect equality may almost come across as a myth. Justice is not only attainable. Social well-being refers to the sense of wellness conferred to individual and communities by social structure, institutions, and processes that enable them not only to survive with dignity but also ensure a sense of right to life, a sense of belongingness, and the ability, uh, ability to the opine and the heard well beyond overcoming differences and discriminations that are materially manifested. In other words, according to the Smith, possibly the most prominent scholar associated with this concept, social well-being refers to who gets what, where, and how. In this phrase, who refers to an individual or a community or an individual as the major member of a community and so on. Then what refers to the various means of attending well-being, both material like wealth, non-material means like human right and so on. And where means who, what, where. Okay, three things. Where is essentially the geographical attribute of the phrase that refers to a certain territory, means place, space, etc., and how refers to the processes, approaches, methods, and so on that confirms differential well-being standards to different human groups or individual at the differential spatial context. Then evolution of social well-being. In 1974, D.M. Smith mentioned in her Harold Laswell book on politics with the subtitle Who Gets What When How? Who Gets What When How? He further explained that replacing when with where could answer several questions that geographer had been grappling with during those decades. With the quantitative revolution, geography as a discipline had undergone transformative changes during the mid to the early later part of the 20th century. Characterized as the human geography in second revolution, alternatively also called radical or concerned with social relevance, brought in humanistic behavior and structural approaches to respond to measure contemporary socialism. Contemporary socialism, it may be your poverty, hunger, racial discrimination, social inequality, and injustice. Those individuals and social group at the lower rungs of the hierarchy could be seen to be suffering from the multiple deprivations. Social discriminations was a popular concern among academics, but geographical discrimination, that is, discrimination identified, practiced, and perpetuated spatially was less engaged with. This was principally because the notion of welfare found its position within welfare economics, where a certain spacelessness was implied. ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ତମର evolution then social indicator movement कौन social indicators movement according to DM Smith in 1995 he wrote that I first investigate a welfare geography towards the end of 1972, writing a monograph which eventually grew into the book. But the origin of the idea came earlier from a concern about social problems stimulated by living in late 1960s in America, which generated the idea of territorial social indicator. The welfare approach was a product of its time and of my own place and experience within them. Before the times indicated by Smith, an aggregable coincidence existed between economic growth and social progresses. No specific need was felt to indicate social well-being differently. However, in the 20 years between 1949 and 1969, median family income in the US doubled and the gross national product more than doubled. Yet the same period was marked by rising crime rates, drugs, a racial unrest, the urban housing crisis, environmental degradations, and the rediscovery of poverty in America. These events promoted doubts about the easy equations of economic growth and social progresses and a widening sense that economic indicators alone no longer suffice to measure that progresses. According to Smith in 1973, in his book called The Geography of Social Well-being in the United States and Introductions to Territorial Social Indicators, he writes, in social statistics, as in economic statistics, the emphasis has always been on the state of the nation as a whole, with regional labels mentioned only in passing, but it is becoming increasingly apparent that social problems like economic problems have an important spatial component and their incidence can be subject to extreme aerial variation in social condition, which is an important part of the national problem in an even more fundamental way. Human geography, then social indicators, which offered a revolutionary framework for the understanding the state of a nation, not just from the aggregate analysis analysis of social indicator, but from the above, mm, but also how little uh, how little of the gross national product per collected down to communities and people living in different location. Then social indicator movements, a term used since in 1960 by geographers for the wide interest expressed in the social indicators to measure the varying social well-being across groups and places in society through territorial social indicators where happiness was at the center. Then what are the measurements and representations of social well-being? କେମିତି measure କରାହବ କେମିତି ତାକୁ represent କରାହବ? Several research traditions are joined together in the social indicators movement, but they share a concern for measurement, analysis, and the reporting to a general audience of aspects of social condition. A broader view of social indicator advocated by many leading theorists and practitioner sees the task as one of the social measurement and analysis designed to improve our understanding of what the main features of society are, how they are interrelated, and how these features and their relationship change. According to Duncan in 1974, he had opened opinion that standardized measures of social processes must be available on a temporal basis, indicating what determines a basic or minimum standard of well-being and the changes therein. To be able to develop a concentrized measure of social change, a relevant database along with required social work and models were also required to be developed. Social indicator work must extend to topics for which measures are now either inadequate or non-existent. Then it gradually the measurement progressed into representation of well-being as conceptualized by scholars like Pareto and Drynovsky, among others, during the later part of the 20th century. Quality of life and measurement. क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ माने कौन क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ जोटा कि रेफर करे तांकर कंडीशन ऑफ द ह्यूमन लाइफ that is beyond just existence. Generally, material existence indicated by the economic indicator. It has been criticized to be essentially ethnocentric and incapable of measuring distributing social benefits. In this context, the physical quality of life index, ଯାହାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ PQLI, physical quality life index, it was developed to it was developed to negate the limitations of the gross GNP. GNP based measure, the index uses three indicators. कौन indicators? ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା literacy, ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା infant mortality, and out ହେଲା third ହେଲା life expectancy at age 1. Each is placed on a fixed. The It is set based on the historical experience in terms of what might be achieved, the expected goal, having placed the three indicators on a common scale. The composite index is the result of an equally weighted summations. The PQLI is relatively neutral. It measures result, not includes. The welfare school of thought is general and within geography in particular was not free from the being critic. The preoccupations with so-called unbiased and value-free knowledge was so strongly that notions like social well-being, then the quality of life struggle to the positions themselves as the core of the discipline and often occupied only a peripheral positions for a sufficiently long period. However, with realizations and consequent upswing, especially against unequal and undemocratic city spaces, mainly from the first world, there was an increased urge to ensure territorial and distributive justice, which help this alternate world view to concentrate world view to concentrate and enabled geographical research around the same to become well expected, accepted, and justified. The ideas of social well-being and PQLI in the 1990s culminated in what is popularly known as the Human Development Index. Human Development Index का just like social well-being, the human development as a concept also finds its origin in the departure from the narrow and single-lensed economic view of the world almost around the same time, that is the later half of the 20th century. During this time, it was realized that income can be necessary but not a sufficient condition in explaining development. Other parameters like knowledge and health are also equally crucial. Later on, the importance of opportunity, choice, participation, sustainability, rights, and equality was also realized. Along with the economic factor, socio-political, cultural, environmental factors were also incorporated to provide a wholesome understanding of human development. ଯେମିତିକି ତମର health dimension ହେଇଗଲା. The health dimension is accessed by the life expectancy of birth. The education dimension is measured by the means of years of schooling for adult up to the age 25 years and more and expected years of schooling for children of schooling entering age. The standard of living dimension is measured by the gross national income per capita. It is the composite index of three resultant index, that is life expectancy index, education index, and gross national income, gross national index, income index. Sustainable development goal कौन sustainable development goal समझते जानते what do you mean by sustainable development goal कौन ଆମର ସଷ୍ଟେନେବଲ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ଗୋଲ 2030 ଏଜେଣ୍ଡା ଯୋଉଟା କି ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ନିଆଯାଇଛି at the core of which lies the 17 sustainable development goal. ଫର୍ଷ୍ଟ ହେଲା no poverty, ସେକେଣ୍ଡ ହେଲା ଏଇଟା ସବୁ ମନେ ରଖିଦବ, ଏଇଟା ବହୁତ important. First one is no poverty, second one is your zero hunger, third is good health and good well-being, fourth है quality education, fifth है gender equality, sixth है clean water and sanitation, seventh है affordable and clean energy, eighth है decent work and economic growth, eighth है sorry ninth है industry innovation and infrastructure, tenth है reduce inequality, 11th sustainable cities and communities, 12th है responsible consumption and production, 13 है climate actions, 14 है life below water, 15 है life on land, 16 है peace, justice and strong institutions, 17 है partnership for the goal. These sustainable development goals were established by the United Nations to address various issues as blueprints for peace, prosperity for people, and the planet for present and future. It is started with 8 Millennium Development Goal in the year 2000 to be achieved by 2015, and now Sustainable Development Goal have above mentioned 17 goals to act on the achieved through global partnership. At this stage, it is important to clarify the links between human development and sustainable development goals. The United Nations itself suggested that though the two are intricately connected, they were two distinct concepts. Human development is like a composite philosophy incorporating all possible parameters that contribute to and therefore explain the development of human beings. Sustainable development goals, on the other hand, provide a yardstick for the assessment for the of developmental stages and enable nations to state targets for a certain level of development. Some observations from India. It is important to contextualize the same for some Indian perspective. Having started a little above zero point 0.4 in 1990s, India in 2020 attained a Human Development Index value. Then your as far as the sustainable development goal are concerned, a partnership of key stakeholder like the government, the civil society organizations, the private sectors, the NGOs, the academia, and the like is enabling the country towards their achievement through an approach of cooperative and competitive federalism. India began with 13 goals in 2018 and increased it to 16 goals along with a qualitative assessment of the 17th goal by 2021 from 39 target and 62 indicator in 2018 to 70 target and 115 indicators in 2020 to 21, providing goal-wise ranking to states and union territories throughout the country has come a long way, but a long way lies ahead as well. Questions ଗୁଡା ଯୋଉଟା ଅଛି books ରେ terminal questions explain the sustainable development goal. How would you relate this goal to the concept of human development? Then what is human development and how it is measured? Discuss the concept and measurement of quality of life. Then critically discuss the concept of social well-being. ଏସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଗୁଡା important ଅଛି. Then next ହେଲା ତମର 15. 15 ଟା ହେଲା ତମର social indicator. Social indicator ରେ ଆମେ ପଢିବୁ components of social model. Social indicator ଜାଣିଥିବ କଣ? Social indicator କାହାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ? Social indicator are a set of indicator that enable the measurement of progress toward the policy objective designed for promoting employment, combating poverty, improving the living conditions and working conditions, combating exclusion, developing the human resources, and social indicators deal with the measuring the quality of life and associated attributes such as housing, employment, human rights, poverty, education, health, and safety, etc. To conclude, one may identify the following ideals of social indicators. It should measure the state of and changes over time in major dimension of social conditions that can be judged normatively as part of a comprehensive and interrelated set of such measures embedded in a social model and their complications and use of addressing public policies goal. What is the social indicators origin of the concept on? It originated in the 1960s. The social indicators the terms came into use in several countries in Europe and North America. Several accounts are available sketching the development of what is called the social indicator movements discussed in the previous unit. It is worth taking note to the fact that much interest in the social indicators arose with the proposal for a regular national social report in the USA. There are three recurring claims for social indicators arising from the perspective of public policies decisions are that social indicator can help to evaluate specific government programs, to develop a balance sheet or system of social accounts, and to set goal and priorities. A four-stage processes of societal management for improved social well-being suggested by board look intrusive. First one is your the detection of the state of affairs or measurement of system outputs, then evaluations of determining whether this is the desired state or not. Third one is diagnosis or finding the origins of the detected states as it arises from the social causative mechanism. Fourth, actions to remedy as undesired situation arrived at from knowledge of the operations of the inputs to it. Social indicators ର criticism କଣ? ଉଁ, First ହେଲା social indicators are the time series that allow comparison over an extended period. Second ହେଲା social indicators are statistics that can be disaggregated by other relevant characteristics. Given only this two criteria, there is little possibilities of distinguishing the subset of statistics called social indicators from the set of all social statistics that are available in disaggregated time series form. The need is to define social indicators in a way that is neither too exclusive nor too inclusive. It would be preferable to have a definitions that would facilitate a resolutions of the proper functions of the social indicators with respect to social accounting and social reporting. Then a social indicator as a component of social system model. Indicators con according to Land in 1971, he proposed that the term social indicator refers to the social statistics and can be explained in the following ways. First, they are components in a social system model, including socio-psychological, economic, demographic, and ecological, or of some particular segment or processes thereof. Second, they can be collected and analyzed at various times and accumulated into a time series. Third, they can be aggregated or disaggregated to labels appropriated to the specifications of the model. It shows that we need to devote more professional social science efforts to the specifications of model of social institutions. We need to specify the equation systems governing the transformations of the inputs of social institutions include into outputs and to estimate the parameter of the system empirically. These are the major unsolved problem in social indicators. They are the essential sociological prerequisite to a serious evaluations of the potential of a policy accounting and other such proposal. As both social indicator and policies accounting vary over geographical space. We may extend this debate further by bringing this spatial dimension into it. It means that we need socio-spatial model of processes and institution in education, health, the physical environment, income, poverty, welfare, public order, science, the arts, social participations, leisure, technology, the family, the polity, religion, and other related topics. Then, what are the measures of social indicators? What is the aim of the social measurement? The principal aim of social measurement is to provide quantitative values of the numerous variables that influence economic and social phenomena. Social phenomena, policymakers and other users of such informations need to assess these variables with greater precision to gain a better understanding of the natures of the underlying concepts and of the changes in the social indicators over time and across regions and nations because the concept and the variables do not always lend themselves to easy quantification. The challenges in social measurement are not only to devise appropriate measures, but also to continue to improve the existing measures. It will aim then objective hala. There are objective and subjective measure of social indicators. For examples of objective social indicators include unemployment rate, crime rates, estimates of life expectancy, health status, indexes such as the average number of healthy days in the past month for a specific population, school enrollment rates, average achievement, score on a standardized test, and rate of voting in elections. Example of subjective social indicator include measure of subjective well-being such as individual self-report health status, how satisfied individual are with their life as a whole with specific life domains. For example, work life, social life, and family life, and frequency of positive over negative feelings they may have experienced during the last week or so. Objective measures of social indicators have been supported on the basis that they provide a scientific and systematic approach to the study of quality of life. Such measures, according to Lippmann in 1976, he has suggested provide a set of indicators that can be applied to community setting both locally and cross culturally. However, indicators such as income, marital status, race, and gender have demonstrated only a low to moderate relationship with self assessment of well-being, life satisfactions, and life quality. On the other hand, Converse in 1975 have argued that the objective measures being valid and reliable are preferable to self-assessment as conditions can be better or worse irrespective of personal opinion. Social indicators and quality of life. In the recent decades, the dominant conceptions of social indicators among scholars and public policies official is that they are statistical measures that have some significance for the quality of life broadly constituted for the society as a whole or for specific subpopulation segments or components thereof that are useful for social reporting to the general public and for evidence based public policy making. Subjective social indicators are statistics that have some significance for measuring the quality of life from the point of view of individual assessment, and objective social indicators are statistics that have some significance for measuring the quality of life from the point of view of any independent observer. For example, official mortality and morbidity rates, social indicators pertaining to specific aspects of life or domains of well-being are often combined into composite social indicators that seek to give a sense of the overall quality of life or well-being in specific countries, populations, or other social units. An important approach to the measurement of quality of life is QOL. QOL is through the use of indicators quality of life QOL. Here, as Evans in 1994, he argues objective measures or social indicators represent, in a broad sense, the individual standard of living, represented by variable conditions inherent in the given cultural unit. Evans defined subjective quality of life as the degree to which the individual's life is perceived to match some implicit or explicit internal standard or referent. This approach that modifies the objective approach is often employed in such disciplines as psychology, medical science, or social science to seek and explain which factor contribute to individual happiness or satisfaction. This measure uses interviews and questionnaire and obtain the subjective or responses directly from participant. This is the preferred approach of many researchers and planners, including Wish, Mayors, Brown, Shu present a conceptual framework for assessing the quality of life at the urban level that employs objective and subjective indicators. Most literature on quality of life deals with the problems of selecting appropriate indicators and lists are defined. However, the search for a definitive list is a chimera. The appropriate list is determined by the circumstance of each specific planning study. Then, poverty and social indicator. Poverty and social indicators. The social Indicators present in entirely different method of poverty measurement. Researchers have a long tradition of using social indicators to measure both economic hardship and affluence because each household need is imperfectly measured by an income or consumption threshold. Many households with incomes above the threshold, many still experience hardships such as hunger or face high rent payments or heavy medical expenses that prevent its member from buying enough food or fuel. Further, individual member of a household may suffer hardship because of unequal sharing of incomes within the household. In this case, the direct measure of material hardship might offer a useful indications of a poverty, especially in cross-national context, and many social scientists are therefore attracted to such measures. Then, what are the issues of health and education? The health status of the population is a reflection of the socio-economic development of the country and is shaped by a variety of factors, level of income and standard of living, housing, sanitation, water supply, education, employment, health, consciousness, personal hygiene, and by the coverage, availability, accessibility, and affordability of healthcare delivery service. It is widely accepted that the poor health status of low income countries is the product of inadequate nutrition, lack of protected water supply, and overcrowded and insanitary housing conditions. These conditions leads to deficiencies of diseases, just like your airborne diseases and physically related with waterborne diseases which dominate the morbidity pattern in less developed countries. In brief, this disease arises from a set of conditions which is themselves represent poverty and deprivation. The relationship between health and poverty or health and development is complex, multifaceted, and multi-directional. Poverty in its various dimensions could be a manifestation as well as determinant of an individual health in its most basic form as a state of food deprivations and nutritional inadequacy. Poverty has a direct bearing on the morbidity and longevity of people. Deprivation, such as lack of access to critical amenities, including safe water, sanitation, non-polluting domestic fuel, connectivity of life support service, and most importantly to education and general awareness contribute to reinforcing ill health and morbidity and higher mortality rates. The rise in individual earnings created further growth in demand for education. There has been a very significant improvement in education with respect to inter-regional inequalities and inequalities by gender, caste, religion, etc. during the post-independence period. The expansion of education since the independence period has made a significant contribution to economic growth. Both social and private rates of return to education are estimated to be reasonably high compared to the alternative rates of return. Gender deprivation कोण The Constitution of India, adopted in 1950, is progressive not only in granting equality to women but also in empowering the state to adopt measures of affirmative discrimination in favor of women. The Constitution, good a second. ଦେଇଦିଅ କବାଟା ଦେଇଦିଅ ଶାସନ ଦେଇଦିଅ। Empowering discrimination in favor of women, the Constitution further imposes of a fundamental duty on every citizen to abstain from practices derogatory to the dignity of women. First, literacy and education. Despite rapid growth in literacy in post-independent India, gender deprivation still exists and needs to be overcome despite progressively increasing gains for females in literacy and education, resulting in declining disparities in 2011, about two-thirds of the female population was illiterate. Literate, 65.46% as against more than 80% of the male, that is 82.14%. One of the notable features of the census 2011 is that the decadal increase in the number of literates among male is 31.19% points, while the corresponding increase in the case of female is 49.10%. Over the year, the gender gap seems to be closing. The early decades of independence saw huge disparity between boys and girls at the primary level, with these situations being even worse at the upper primary level. Undoubtedly, the gender disparity over the year have come down, yet a substantial gender gap in enrollment at the elementary level still persist. Then discrimination and social exclusion. The concept of social exclusion has made valuable contribution to the current understanding of poverty and socio-spatial polarizations. The finding of a study commissioned by ILO on social exclusion suggested that concept of social exclusion has certain advantage. It provides an integrated and dynamic analytical perspective which reveals the processes, agencies, and multidimensionality of disadvantage. According to Nike in 1994, he identified the following types of exclusion: exclusion due to the poverty, exclusion from employment and means to livelihood, and caste-based exclusion. Social exclusion is a process which restricts the access of certain social groups to valued resources and entitlements, relegating them to the status of social outsider. It is a multidimensional concept conceived to capture different forms of social disadvantage, economic, social, political, and cultural. The persist in multiple variants and with a differently intensity across nation. Consequently, in its widest connotations, the concept encompasses theory of poverty, inequality, racial, ethnic, long-term employment, and citizenship. According to Amartya Sen in 2000, he argues that social exclusion helps to understand poverty better and in a more comprehensive way. While the underlying idea behind the concept of social exclusion is not radically new, the growing literature on the subject has helped to enrich the casual understanding and empirical analysis of certain aspects of poverty and deprivation. Just next tomorrow. Last unit 16, that is social pathology. Social pathology କଣ? What is social pathology? The concept of social pathology that emerged as a field of sociological knowledge producing during the late 19th and early 20th century in the work of scholars such as Emily Durkheim It is also sometimes interpreted as social disorganization map through poverty, crime, violence, alcoholism, gambling, etc., which is seen as pathologizing social well-being, turning into a state of disease and instability. Durkheim saw the lack of consciousness and solidarity in this society as a reason for pathologized state. There are some examples during the period of from COVID-19 pandemic. We all are aware that during the outbreak of the pandemic, certain localities were declared as contaminated zones. Huh. And cordoned off by the police barriers. It was reported that these localities had sustained higher incidence of COVID-19 positive case. These localities where poor people lived and dependent on everyday work were closed. Their access to livelihood opportunities came to a sudden halt. Ironically, people from these localities are often hired as domestic workers and sanitation workers to maintain hygiene and help prevent disease. Leveling and ordering certain groups for spreading the pandemic during the starting period when it was almost mysterious disease to the common public was also in India. The medical route of the field of social pathology in times of such medical emergency as COVID-19, these examples open up a mapping on way in which people and places come to be known as a contagion and the virus at the same time. Through normative knowledge of the social organization and disorganization, this also open up the specter of who is classified as antisocial and where are they located. Mapped within social rubrics of caste, class, race, religions, poverty, gender, sexuality, etc. Then engaging with the concept of social pathology, it appears advantageous to borrow concept from medical science to suggest that society, like an organism, can also fall ill and might require diagnosis and therapeutic intervention. This may also showcase what a healthy society looks like as understood through moral facts that society has come to collectivity identify with any negative influence due to the violations of this moral understanding can be mapped as unhealthy and society is pathologized. However, these norms are not always static and with changing times can pose different standard to which society can be diagnosed as a sick. These changes also reflect changes in social, economic, cultural, and political relations of the power. What are the Marxist philosophy to understanding of social pathology? Marxist philosophy, following the writings of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, responds to his problem by understanding economic exploitations and caste exploitations and class relation in a capitalist society. The opening sentence of the Communist Manifesto written in 1848. The history of hitherto existing society is the history of the class struggle. It is the understanding of relations of class power that Marxism locates the problem that inflict our society, leading it into a state of dysfunctionality. The capitalist society is effectively divided into haves and haves not. Those who control the means of productions and the majority of the people who struggle to meet their basic needs. These contestations leads to social disgrace, poverty, inequality, and marginalization in society. These social pathologists are not the random events or phenomena, but fundamentally rooted in the economic inequality and unequal control over wealth and resources and exploitations and alienations of laboring classes. Marxism also argued that the capitalist mode of production result in a state of alienations for the working classes whose value of labor is appropriated by the bourgeois to maximize its profit. Workers are eliminated from their values of labor by being paid subsistence, which is barely enough to regenerate itself. Then, apart from economic control and exploitations, the other axis through which class conflict is maintained is ideologically control. According to Antonio, an Italian Marxist and revolutionary thinker, in his prison notebooks proposes the idea of cultural hegemony. He argues how the bourgeois control cultural institutions such as media, religion, education, etc., to construct common sensational knowledge to justify economic differentiations and exploitation. Mental health condition or suicides are not only personal or social issues but also systematic failure responsible for rising unemployment, discriminations, lack of security, etc. Therefore, ideological controls also enable economic and state power to obscure resulting social inequalities and represent social pathologies as innate and natural. Marxist principles thus imagine social change through individual and social manipulation and class conflict. Social disorganization theory Connie, urban socialists, particularly E.W. Burgess and Robert Park, associated with the Chicago School of Urban Sociology at the University of Chicago, engaged with this through the social disorganization theory in the early 20th century, using using empirical and ethnographic research in the city of the Chicago. They saw widespread industrialization and urbanizations leading to tremendous social churnings. Cities were seen to become ethnically and racially diverse and economically polarized. Thus, resulting in the emergence of the issue of social delinquency, social imbalance, and other evils such as poverty and crime. They argue that the growth of the cities led to the breaking down of social institutions and norms, producing incoherency and disorganizations in the society. This theoretical view, however, came to criticize for its social for its deterministic nature and vilifications of marginalized communities as the root cause of all social evils and deviancy. Then, what is your social disorganization? Theories argues that growing heterogeneity in urban centers in response to economic growth stall possibility of reaching common standard of expected social behavior and norms. In the lack of these social norms, there is a greater likelihood of um, juvenile delinquencies to occur in such area. Burgess, in his concentric model of the city development in 1925, building upon the city of Chicago, locates the growth of the deviant activities in the zone of transactions. According to the concentric model, the city develops outward from the central business district, which is known as CBD, or downtown as Zone 1. In Zone 2, is the transition zone with factories and light manufacturing units, and zone 3 is where most factory workers live who have escaped the transition zone but need to stay connected with the factories for work and to save travel cost. In zone 4 is the residential area with a better standard of living and apartments where affluent people have moved to avoid the pollutions and chaos of the inner city. The last zone is 5 is the commuters zone, mostly suburban area where rent is low and people are ready to commute over an hour to reach site of our. According to Burgess, given the particularity of the transition zone and heterogeneity, it also emerged as the site of delinquent activities, high divorce rates, desertion of wives, mob activities. Thus, urban model did not apply globally and was restricted to explaining North American city. Geographies of crimes and violence. Crime is not a random event. If it were that random, there would be no purpose in mapping its pattern. It happens somewhere, and this somewhere can be mapped and analyzed to trace its underlying causes. It is to study whether certain places have recurring events of violence and crime, and if so, why and what can be done to redress it. The World Report of Violence and Health, published by the World Health Organization, define violence as the intentional use of physical force or power, threatened or actual, against oneself, another person, or against a group or community that either result in or has a high likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm, maldevelopment, or deprivation. However, not all acts of violence are referred to as a crime. An act of violence is measured as a crime only when seen against established legal standard of the society and answerable law. We study what is considered a crime. It is an act, it is an event, or it is an deviant behavior that is legally punishable or stands against norms established by law to maintain its social order, safety, well-being. For instance, theft, dacoit, murder, rape, homicides, kidnapping, property disputes, etc. are crimes marked by the state as unacceptable and illegal. Crimes can be both consumable and non-consumable. Consumable means where police can initiate an investigation without approval and order from the magistrate. Non-consumable means where prior court approval is required to investigate and take a legal actions. Congenital offences are generally grave, such as murder, rape, kidnapping, while a non-congenital crime is relatively less serious, such as public nuisances or a case of defamation. Then official statistics often provide data on crime committed during a based on reportage of crime. In India, such data on conceivable crimes are provided by the National Crime Record Bureau since its inspections in 1986 through their annual publications titled Crime in India. Mapping these statistics is one way in which geographers and criminologists ascertain crime rates under different heads such as kidnapping, murder, etc., and pertaining to diverse social groups like crime against women such as rape, molestations, SC and ST under the prevention atrocities. Then geographies of poverty. So in Sustainable Development Goal, it investigates eradicating poverty in all its form by 2030. However, the period of COVID-19 induced pandemic has derailed that possibility. The gap between rich and poor countries and social and economic inequality is widening, trapping many, particularly in the underdeveloped and developing regions such as sub-Saharan Africa, in a vicious cycle. Climate change and declining productivity for countries, especially those dependent on agriculture and other primary resources, have worsened this situation further. This has caused issue of livelihood, food and nutrition, unviable standard of living, ranging unemployment and precarious sleeps and high mortality rates, poor educational opportunities and health facilities and diminishing prospects of any changes towards betterment. The vicious cycle of the poverty refers to the circular causations where a person's or reason is likely to remain generationally poor because they are currently poor. As poor people tend to be clustered in certain areas and certain areas emerge as the poorer compared to others, the role of the geographer becomes essential to understand this spatial variation and study their causal factors. These factors could be a lopsided development model, exclusion of certain social subgroups through segregations and historical factor, such as the lingering effects of European colonialism and contemporary neoliberal capitalism, displacing and dispossessing indigenous people and also benefiting the metropolitan economy by shipowning of the resources. Poverty can be defined in absolute terms, as mentioned above, with the reference to a threshold monetary line below with which it is difficult to survive, means severe deprivations and relative poverty, which is about the overall distributions of wealth in a region. According to the latter, someone is classified as poor if his or her income falls below the median income of that region. This measure is mostly used in developed countries. In countries such as India, where reliable data of income is scarce, consumption exemption expenditure is used to measure poverty level, such as through data collected by employment and unemployment round of the quinennial National Sample Survey of India. Poverty, as mentioned earlier, has geographical elements. It emerges as hotspot and spatial clustering, and also represent as urban-rural divide, increasing immigrations in urban areas seeking better livelihood opportunities, often overburden resources, leading to the development of informal settlement and slums. These areas are often characterized by poor access to health, education, and sanitations, and often get mapped as areas with high crime occurrence, drug trafficking, property conflicts, etc. Rural poverty, on the other hand, results from landlessness, diminishing agricultural productivity, limited infrastructures, etc. Socially, this produce health and educational disparities and social and political exclusion. Understanding this spatial and social variations of poverty can allow for effective interventions such as targeted healthcare, slum upgradations, formalizations of informal neighborhood, and enhanced and targeted rural welfare scheme, including infrastructure development at the scale of the globe. Studying this variation can help to understand the wealth disparities and the concentrations of poverty hotspot in underdeveloped and developing countries due to the various reasons, including exploitative global relations. ତମର ସରିଲା ୟୁନିଟ୍ 16 ଯାଏଁ 13, 14, 15, 16 କାଲିଠୁ ମେ ବି ତମର ଇଏ ରିମୋଟ ସେନ୍ସିଂ କ୍ଲାसेସ୍ ଥିବ।
आगे मैडम
ଖାଲି ତମର ରିମୋଟ ସେନ୍ସିଂ କ୍ଲାସ୍ ଥିବ କାଲି ବୋଧେ ସେଇ 4ଟା ରୁ 6ଟା। ହଉ ଚାଲ ଠିକ ଅଛି ରଖୁଛି ତମର ସବୁ ଯାକ ୟୁନିଟ୍ ସରିଗଲା ଯୋଉ ଶ୍ରିୟା ଦେବୀ ତମେ କହୁଥିଲ ଯୋଉ ୟୁନିଟ୍ 4 ଯୋଉ statistical sorry social geography and methods ଯୋଉ ଥିଲା correlation coefficient ସେଇଟା practical जो पढ़ी थी लास्ट ईयर फैक्टर्ड सॉरी एफजीडी फोकस डिस्कस्ड ग्रुप ସେଇଟାର ଅଛି ସେଇଟା ଟିକେ ଦେଖିଦବ ଆଉ ଅଛି କୋରିଲେସନ ଅଛି ସେଇଟା ବି ପଢେଇଥିଲି ଯୋଉଟା ପ୍ରାକ୍ଟିକାଲ ରେ MGG 001 ରେ ପଢେଇଥିଲି ତାର କିଛି ପାର୍ଟସ ଗୁଡା ସେଥିରେ ସବୁ ଅଛି 80% 90% ତା ଦେହରେ ଅଛି include ଅଛି ସେଇଟା ଦେଖିଦବ।
आगे आगे मैडम
ଠିକ ଅଛି ତାହେଲେ ରଖୁଛି ହଁ
आगे मैडम नमस्ते।
ହଁ।